Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad that you are able to join us in our third and final Pride Month celebration. It's been a very busy month for us. Last week we took a hike as a group. The week before that we held La Cañada's first ever Pride in the Park. It's a public Pride celebration. Over 500 people in attendance. It was crazy, beyond our expectations. Today we are welcoming Sarah and Ian Hoffman, who are authors and who not only have written some children's books called Starting with Jacob's New Dress, but they've also found themselves on the American Library Association's one of the most banned authors of the decade because of this work. And so they are going to be talking to us about what it's like to be on that list and the kinds of both celebrations and frustrations that they've encountered in becoming authors. We also have Flint Ridge Bookstore here. They are in the foyer. You might have noticed them as they walked in. They are selling all of the Hoffman's books. So after their lecture, we'll have a bit of a Q&A, and so if you have some questions, keep those in mind. I'll bring the microphone around, and then following everything here, we'll have a reception. There'll be some snacks to have, and then you can buy a book, get some autographs, and maybe if you were too shy to ask a question in public, you could corner them and ask in private. But I'm excited that we are able to host the Hoffmans and continue to host events that allow us to have these necessary conversations in our community. And so with that, Sarah and Ian, thank you for joining us, and take it away.
Hey, I have to tell a story first before we start, which is that a friend of our son's came out into our house back in the new year, over the winter, for a math conference, and he forgot to bring a cable that he needed for his presentation, and I lent him my cable, and I said, but you have to bring this back to me because I need it for my work. And of course he forgot it in the conference room. And so then he went and bought me this gigantic long cable, which is like 12 feet long. And I was just like, I can't believe you did this to me. So this has been like curled up at my desk for for the last 6 months. And tonight, here it is, and it's working perfectly. And I kind of owe him an apology. Anyway, that's Ivan. So I am Ian.
I'm Sarah, and I think that was meant to be.
Yeah.
I think that was divine intervention.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm a Jew, you guys will have to tell me, but I think that's what we're looking at here, right? So I'm Sarah. We want to say thank you to Reverend Sears and this community for having us. And as he mentioned, we are the authors of Jacob's New Dress and also Jacob's Room to Choose and Jacob's School Play starring He, She, and They. And also in a minute, Jacob's Missing Book, which is coming out September 3rd. Which we will tell you about.
So Sarah and I are married. That's often a question. Are you brother and sister, or father and daughter when they see Sarah and Ian Hoffman? Or something stranger. We're married. We have 2 children, Sam and Ruby, and we live in San Francisco with our 3 chickens and 2 rabbits, our cat, and our 30,000 bees.
Also the worms.
Oh, the worms.
We should mention the worms.
Yeah.
Not the intestinal kind. The composting kind.
And our son Sam was the inspiration for our books.
So he is grown now, he's 22, but when he was a 2-year-old, we used to dress him in what we thought of as little boy things. So t-shirts with tractors and dinosaurs on them, and blue jean overalls, and little blue Converse sneakers. And he loved trains and tractors and construction sites. I can't tell you how many times we trespassed onto construction sites so we could, let him sit on a tractor after hours. So one day when he was 2, we walked into a shoe store at home in San Francisco, and we thought, oh, you're a big boy. Do you want to pick your own sneakers? So, would you like the blue shoes or the red shoes? And he said, pink.
And I said, do you mean red? Because, he's 2 years old. I don't really know how well he knows his colors. And he says, pink. And I wasn't sure what to do. It's not like I thought pink was a color only for girls, but I knew that every time we took Sam to the toy store, this is what it looks like. The toys for girls are pink and purple, and the toys for boys are blue and red. And I didn't want to set my kid up for bullying. I mean, he was only 2, but he went to preschool, so it was a situation to think about.
Yeah. Sam was really happy with his sneakers. He loved those. They felt very him. And his preschool teacher was not so happy. She made clear to us that she did not approve of boys who did girl things. And he disregarded that and would go into the dress-up corner and put on the pink flowered floppy hat. And he started wearing pink t-shirts, and he wanted to grow his hair long, and all of his friends were girls. So by the time he was 4, so every day after preschool, he'd come home and he'd put on the tutu that we had, and he asked to have a dance class where he could wear his tutu, which was hard but not impossible to find in San Francisco that many years ago. And at preschool, he always wanted to wear the princess dress, like the dress-up corner dress. And so there was sometimes an argument with the girls who wanted to share it, and he felt it was his. Anyway, one day he asked for a dress that he could wear to school for real.
Yeah, and after that day, he wore a dress to school for real every day. Sam knew that the kids at school would make fun of him, but he wanted to wear a dress more than he wanted not to be teased.
Yeah.
The funny thing about Sam was that at the same time he was exploring all the traditionally feminine things, he loved many of the traditionally boy things. I even hate to say that right
I
that
know.
way.
But you know, Lego,
Lego,
Star Wars.
dinosaurs, medieval weapons.
That's very common.
When he was 5, Sarah took him to a Renaissance fair, and that day Sam dressed up in a little pink sundress, and he had his hair tied up with little pink ribbons, and Sarah told him that he was allowed one souvenir for the day.
Oh yeah, he ran right up to the booth selling the wooden weapons, and he said, "One battle axe, please."
And that is the wooden battle. There's a wooden sword at the top, but that's the actual wooden battle axe there, and it's got this huge chunk out of the side from when he was axing something. Hewing, that's the right word.
Hewing?
Hewing. Yeah.
So the people at the Ren Fair, they loved Sam. They thought he was an adorable little girl with a big axe. And people were coming up to him. It was like he was a magnet for people's attention. There's this one woman carrying a flower who came up to him and she said, "A beautiful flower for a beautiful girl." And it was really sweet, the attention, and he loved it, but it made me wonder what it would have been like if they knew he was a boy.
Yeah, not so pretty.
Maybe.
Anyway, Sam was a boy who liked dresses. He dressed in a way that people weren't used to seeing and that they didn't understand. But not that long ago, a little girl in pants would have been just as strange. So this photo is a 4th grade classroom in Wisconsin. The year is 1920. And you can see that the girls are all wearing dresses because they're not allowed to wear pants. And you really don't have to go back 100 years. I was born in 1962. When I was growing up, girls were required to wear dresses to all formal school functions in elementary school and middle school, and I think in high school that relaxed a little bit. And now a girl in pants is something we don't remark on at all, I don't think. I wouldn't notice it. And what's maybe even more interesting here are that the boys, I don't know how well you can see this photograph, but the boys are wearing knickers with tall socks. And when we show this in classrooms, we have to explain what knickers are because kids have never seen them before. So it's interesting that knickers were standard clothing style. You can tell they're all wearing them. This is their summer uniform. But that's completely, almost all but gone from our world.
Do you kind of wish knickers were coming back?
I'm actually a fencer, and there are 2 places in the world where knickers still exist. One is on the golf course occasionally, and in every fencing studio, everyone is wearing knickers. So, yeah,
You do. You do. So we show this photo to kids when we go speak at elementary schools, just to communicate to them that what people think is normal now is going to change. And it has changed over our lifetimes, and it will change over their lifetimes. And we tell kids that as long as what you're wearing is safe for you and you're not hurting anybody else, then you should be able to wear what you're comfortable with. So we believe a lot of things. Another thing we believe is that all kids should
We
be
actually
able
stopped
to...
in the car the other day and wrote down the things we believe in.
We did do that for our website, yeah. We don't really get to them here, but 2 of them. The second one is that we believe that kids should be able to open a picture book and see themselves reflected, whoever they are. And so when our son Sam was little, we looked around for a book about a boy like him, and we didn't find one. And I had already been writing for adults, and Ian was writing picture books on other subjects, and we looked at each other and said, maybe it's time for us to write a book. So we wrote a book. It's not autobiographical so much as inspired by our son and other kids like him who we met over time. So the book is about a little boy who wears a dress, something that is outside of typical gender norms, just like a little girl in pants would have been 100 years ago.
And it turned out we were right. There were no books like this, and people wanted books like this. So teachers and school counselors really appreciate this book. It's used in teaching tolerance curriculums in many states, and really appreciated by parents too. Jacob's New Dress, as Reverend Kyle mentioned, is also on the American Library's list of the 100 most banned and challenged books of the decade. The list features many of the most popular and celebrated titles and writers in publishing, like The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe, Looking for Alaska by John Green. I mean, we're kind of honored to be on a list with these people. This was kind of unexpected. And unfortunately, since that list was published at the end of the last decade, book bans and challenges have increased. In Florida, the Don't Say Gay bill made it illegal to read Jacob's New Dress in any K through 3 classroom, and then they expanded it to any K through 12 classroom. So if a public teacher in Florida has this book in their classroom, the district can be fined, the teacher can be prosecuted for a felony charge, which is up to 5 years in prison and up to a $5,000 fine, and the teacher can lose their teaching license. And after Florida passed that bill, 26 other states either passed or are in the process of passing similar laws.
Yeah. More on that later. So when Sam went to kindergarten, he was really lucky because he had a teacher named Ms. Reeves. And if you've read our second or third book, Ms. Reeves is in there using her real name. It was a fun thing to get to do. Write a character and actually get to name her after the real person. So Ms. Reeves was really progressive, and she believed in preventing bullying before it could even begin. So she developed these lessons on gender. She wasn't given a lesson plan. She wasn't given support from the school. She just kind of came up with these things as the opportunities presented themselves in her classroom. So if she came upon kids arguing about, is blue a girl color or a boy color, she would get in on the conversation. Is pink a girl color? Is it a boy color? Oh, wait, are there girl colors and boy colors, or are there just colors? And one day she showed them a picture of a kid about their age with short hair. And she said, is this a boy or a girl? And of course, all the kids said, that's a boy. And she said, well, that's me when I was your age. So can sometimes girls have short hair? Oh, okay, well, can sometimes boys have long hair? And it was just these really simple, age-appropriate lessons that she worked on with the kids, and they learned to accept our kid, and they stopped teasing him. It was magic.
What none of us realized was that Miss Reeves was accidentally running a science experiment, because there was a kindergarten classroom exactly next door to Sam's, and these kids weren't getting any of those lessons from their teacher. So when they all went out on the playground together, these kids would harass Sam. They'd question him a lot, they would tease him a lot, because they hadn't been taught these simple age-appropriate lessons. And what we learned was from Ms. Reeves doing that is that creating a culture of kindness takes work, but it's not hard work.
Yeah.
But the bigger problems for Sam came in the following year when he started first grade. So in California, kindergarten classrooms have the bathroom in the classroom by law. And once you get to first grade, you use the bathrooms in the hallways with the other kids, bigger, older kids who have not received lessons on gender diversity and kindness and tolerance from Ms. Reeves.
Yeah. I mean, he was harassed in the bathroom, he was assaulted in the bathroom, kids would yell at him, a kid kicked him. It got so bad, and we didn't know about it, that he just stopped using the bathroom at school. And so what happened? He got sick.
Yeah, brilliant first grader logic. The bathroom is safe, so
Yeah.
I'm not going to use the bathroom, and I'm not going to drink water during the day, so I don't need to use the bathroom.
He took care of the problem himself until his body revolted, and then we found out what was going on. And that's when we got the school involved, which wasn't actually smooth or easy or helpful for the most part in the short term.
So school bathrooms weren't the only difficult bathrooms. Any public bathroom was this situation. We couldn't let him walk by himself into a bathroom in the airport, in a restaurant, at the mall, if we were playing in the park. Once Sam and I were at the zoo, we were standing next to each other at urinals, we were both peeing, and this little 8-year-old boy comes in from behind us, sees Sam's long blonde hair, and is outraged that a girl is in the men's room, despite the fact that the boy is standing at the urinal peeing, and lifts up his fist and comes running at Sam to punch him in the back of the head.
Yeah.
And I was busy, obviously, so all I could do is yell, "Stop," as loud as I could. And the boy stopped, and he looked at me puzzled, like, "Can't you see there's a girl standing next to you?"
Yeah, it just really defied gender norms. And at the time, Sam was just wearing khaki pants and a t-shirt, and it was just the long hair and the pink Crocs, but that was sufficient to drive people to anger, which is something that we've seen a lot in our work in various forms. So at that time, we didn't know any other boys like our son. We didn't know any other parents like us. And we eventually found community online and really formed this amazing group of allies. And everyone seemed to be like the only parent in their school, or this was the only kid in that grade or community. And so everyone was alone. But suddenly online, there was like 350 families, and we all connected. And a lot of them lived in places that were a lot harder to live in than California. There was Mississippi and Alaska. There's some people who lived abroad. Like, people really, really struggled. And we figured out together how to support our kids. Like, we really bumbled through together. Now there's a lot of resources, but there just wasn't at that time. Yeah.
As we got to know these families, we realized that there were 3 questions that they asked each other right away. And the first question was always, "Is your family supportive?" By which they meant like grandparents, aunts, uncles. Are both parents on the same page? Which often they weren't. The second question was, "Is your kid's school supportive?" And that would lead to a series of discussions. And the third question, interestingly enough, was, "How's the school handling the bathroom?"
Yeah, and from that we learned that we were not alone, that these boys and girls across the country and around the world who didn't fit into gender norms were having the exact same kinds of problems. So you might be getting that we are those people. We decided it was time to write another book. And so we wrote Jacob's Room to Choose, which is about finding the bathroom that is right for you, regardless of your gender. It was the first book of its kind at the time.
Again, it was a book that school teachers and counselors and parents were looking for that didn't exist. It went on to win awards from Forward Reviews and the Children's Book Council. It was selected for the 2020 Rainbow Book List by the American Library Association. And like Jacob's New Dress, it's illegal to read this book in a Florida classroom. It was also banned in Malaysia, which was always curious to us because we wondered who in Malaysia was reading our books. And we read through the Malaysian laws, and we realized that just owning a copy in any way, any format, like just having a copy on your computer or having a physical copy, could get you 3 years in prison or fined $4,000 or both, which seemed a little extreme to us until we remembered that if a kindergarten teacher in Florida has this book in classroom, they can be paying up to $5,000 and spending 5 years in prison. For our third book, Jacob's School Play, starring he, she, and they, we were inspired by the tremendous change we'd seen in the world in the 16 years since our son first insisted on wearing a dress. We noticed how in this world of gender diversity and new identities, we noticed how often the subject of pronouns was coming up. It came up in the news, it came up in offices, it came up every time we went to a conference. And we thought about pronouns, and we realized that they were simple words that people could latch onto and try and relate to. as they were trying to understand the huge range of gender expression and transformation that was taking place in this country. We wanted to create a book that, once again, introduced a character who is different than their peers and show that the job of a community is to support the person as they are.
So in this book, Jacob and his friends are putting on a school play when the question of pronouns comes up. Who's he, who's she, and who is they? So it introduces kids to the idea that there's really a number of different ways to be in the world and that everybody fits in their own way. So it's just an introduction to pronouns for kids and for their grown-ups who
In our experience, kids do not struggle with pronouns. You tell them what to do, they're like, yeah, okay, cool. But grown-ups really struggle. So Bank Street College of Education selected Jacob's school play as one of the best children's books of 2021, which in the children's book world, that's a big honor, and we're really proud of that.
So Texas was the first state to pull Jacob's school play off the library shelves, but it was soon followed by the more than 20 other states that are currently banning children's books. So how is it that these books that win awards and that parents cry over when they contact us and the teachers and librarians appreciate and, we get positive feedback on are actually so evil that children should not be allowed to see them?
Why don't we read one of our books?
Oh, you can see how evil they are.
And you can see for yourself what they're like. This is Jacob's new dress. Do you have a copy?
Sure.
Okay.
You want me to read it?
Yeah, you read. I'll turn the pages.
Jacob's New Dress by Sarah and Ian Hoffman. Jacob ran to join Emily in the dress-up corner. Emily slid into the shiny yellow dress while Jacob wiggled into a sparkly pink dress. They both reached for the crown, but Jacob got there first. "I'll be the princess," he said. Christopher frowned. "Jacob, why do you always wear the girl clothes? Put on the knight armor. That's what the boy wears." "Christopher, stop telling us what to do," said Emily. Ms. Wilson heard the hubbub. "What's going on, kids?" "Jacob is wearing girl clothes," complained Christopher. "The dress-up corner is where we come to use our imaginations," Ms. Wilson said. "You can be a dinosaur, a princess, a farmer, anything. Christopher, what do you want to be?" "A boy," Christopher scowled. Ms. Wilson smiled. "Jacob, you try it. What new thing could you imagine being? A firefighter? A policeman?" "Ms. Wilson," Jacob said proudly, "I'm the princess." "How was school today?" Mom asked, studying Jacob's face. "Fun?" "Christopher says boys can't wear dresses," said Jacob. "Can they?" "Of course they can." Mom hugged Jacob. "Why don't you get the dress you wore on Halloween and play in that?" Jacob pulled on his witch's dress and twirled. He loved the way the black lace swirled around him. "I want to wear my dress to school." Jacob's mom frowned. "I don't think so," she said. "That's for dress up at home. It would get dirty at school." "Then can I get a regular dress? A dress I can wear to school?" Mom was quiet. "Let me think about that," she said. Jacob wondered what to play next. Pirate? Princess? Bird? Heaping 3 towels onto the floor, Jacob made a nest. Then he wrapped another towel around himself for feathers. Snug and warm, he imagined what a school dress would look like. The next morning, Jacob stood on the stairs wrapped in a giant bath towel. "What are you wearing?" asked Mom. "It's like a dress, but I can get it dirty," Jacob said, pointing to the towel. "I made it." Dad frowned. "You can't go to school like that." "Put on some shorts and a shirt under that dress thing," Mom said, "and hurry, we're late for school." "What's that?" demanded Christopher. Jacob moved closer to his mom. "Good morning, Christopher," said Jacob's mom. "Jacob's wearing something new he invented. Isn't it nice?" Christopher didn't answer. "I want a dress like that," cried Emily. "Where'd you get it?" "It's not a dress," said Jacob, glancing up at his mom. "It's a dress thing." Jacob saw Emily smile and grinned back. "I can make you one." The playground was full of laughter and running feet as the children played tag. Christopher sneaked up, yanked off Jacob's towel, and ran away whooping. "Christopher's mean," hissed Emily. Jacob watched Christopher wave the towel like a captured flag and started to cry. "How was school today?" Mom asked. "Christopher stole my dress thing," said Jacob. The tears flooded back. Mom hugged Jacob. "I'm sorry. Christopher is not always a good friend." "Mom," whispered Jacob, "can you help me make a real dress?" Mom didn't answer. The longer she didn't answer, the less Jacob could breathe. "Let's get the sewing machine," she said finally. Jacob felt the air refill his body. He grinned. Mom smiled back. "There are all sorts of ways to be a boy," she said, "right?" Dad looked up from his book. "Mom and I made a dress," said Jacob quietly. Dad studied the dress. Jacob started to get that can't breathe feeling again. "I can see you worked hard on that dress," said Dad. "Are you sure you want to wear it to school?" Jacob nodded. Dad nodded back and smiled. "Well, it's not what I would wear, but you look great." Jacob skipped up the front walk to school. He found Emily inside and showed her his new dress. They found matching colors in their clothes and laughed. "Purple and white." "Do you want to play dress up?" said Emily. "No, monkey bars." Together they ran out to the playground. "My mom and I made this dress," Jacob said proudly at circle time. "We used her sewing machine." "That's wonderful," said Ms. Wilson. "Was the sewing machine hard to use?" "Why does Jacob wear dresses?" interrupted Christopher. Ms. Wilson paused. "I think Jacob wears what he's comfortable in, just like you do. Not very long ago, little girls couldn't wear pants. Can you imagine that?" Christopher shook his head. "I asked my dad, and he says boys don't wear dresses." Jacob rubbed the hem of his dress, looking at the little stitches he'd sewn himself. He could hear Ms. Wilson and the other kids talking, but their words sounded far away. On the playground, Christopher yelled, "Let's play tag, boys versus girls. Jacob, you're on the girls' team." A bunch of kids laughed. Jacob felt his dress surrounding him, like armor, soft, cottony, magic armor. "Christopher, I made this dress. I'm proud of it, and I'm going to wear it." "And you know what else?" Jacob tagged Christopher. "You're it." Jacob sprinted across the playground, his dress spreading out like wings.
That was such a happy interlude. I kind of hate to do what's next.
They can take it.
Okay, let's talk about book bans. It's important to remember before we talk about statistics that the books that are in school libraries, classrooms, or used as part of a teaching curriculum were selected by librarians and educators. These books have already been vetted by the people we trust with our children. Book bans occur when those choices are overridden by school boards, administrators, or politicians on the basis of a particular book's content. Now, there have always been book bans in America since before the founding of this country. Somebody somewhere is always aggrieved about something. However, in the last 3 years, there's been a spike in book bans totally out of character with anything that went on in the previous 2 decades. So I don't know how well you can see these charts, so I'll just talk about them. From 2017 to 2020, about 400 book titles were challenged each year. A challenge means someone objected to the book, and the school or library had to review whether it would be banned or not. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. Then we get to 2021, and it starts to go up. About 1,600 book titles are challenged that year, which is a 375% increase from the previous 2 decades. Some of these were challenged multiple times, so there were about 2,500 instances of book bans in schools. Then we get to 2022. Oh, can you actually see that? Oh, that's fun. Again, 1,600 individual book titles are challenged, but this time there were about 3,400 instances of book bans in schools, which is up 33% from the previous year. And then we get to the magical 2023, where over 4,000 instances of book bans in the first half of the school year. That was more than the bans for the entire previous year, and we still haven't calculated what happened in the second half of the year. So, what books get banned? Somebody want to guess? You don't have to. Overwhelmingly, book banners target stories by and about people of color and LGBTQ plus people. The news gets worse, so just bear with me here. Book bans have taken place in 42 states, but there's not an even distribution. 40% of all US book bans take place in school districts in Florida. Texas, Missouri, Utah, Arkansas, and Pennsylvania are other leaders in book bans. 10 states, led by Florida again, have passed legislation that bar instruction on sexual orientation or gender identity, prohibit educators from discussing advantages or disadvantages based on race, and or mandate that schools must catalog classroom and library books.
Oh yeah, and that one, it sounds innocuous, but what it actually means is that all the books have to come out of the classrooms and the libraries and then be cataloged, every single book written down. And then they send this list to the state. And it's supposed to be reviewed, and then they're supposed to hear what's okay to keep. But states don't have offices that are staffed to be reviewing these book lists, nor do they even have comprehensive lists of what is supposedly okay. And so what ends up happening is these entire libraries are just packaged up and left so that they're unavailable to kids and communities.
There are often serious criminal penalties for teachers, librarians, and school districts attached to these laws, which leads to soft censorship. That's when a book isn't outright banned, but since it might be controversial, it's avoided. Let's face it, it's easier for staff than a direct confrontation. If you're an Arkansas teacher or librarian, you can be looking at penalties of up to 6 years in prison and fines of up to $10,000 for having inappropriate literature that you're passing out to children. There's no definition of what inappropriate literature is. If you're in Indiana, it's 2.5 years in jail. That's a little better, but the fines are also up to $10,000.
It's better to just go to jail for 2.5 years for showing a kid a book.
Yeah, so it's better to be safe and remove a book before it's a problem than be sorry and get fined or imprisoned. Now, book bans are not popular with most Americans. In May 2023, Ipsos NPR poll, 65% of Americans stated that they oppose book bans by school boards, and 69% oppose book bans by state lawmakers. Now try and think of another issue in the United States where 69% of the people agree on anything.
Yeah, it's important to remember that these really do not reflect what the majority of people are thinking. So there's these groups that mobilize book bans. There's one you may have heard of called Moms for Liberty. And like all the others, they're organized, they are very well funded, they are political, and they're extremists. And they have the broader agenda of defunding public schools and public libraries. And you know, these drives to get books banned, they're not really about the books. Like, I don't think they actually care about the books. I think that they care about making people afraid so that they can get elected, because we're talking about people who do not have a political majority. And the only way to make these things, to get the votes, is to scare people. So, and they don't mind lying about the content of these books. So, you know, these groups, they hide where they get their money from. They hide that they're very small and well organized. I don't know if you've heard the term astroturfing. So they're not grassroots, they're astroturf.
So in June of last year, the Washington Post published an article that looked into the details of over 1,000 individual challenges to books. And they did the hard investigative work because there's no comprehensive list of banned books anywhere in the United States. So you have to call up each school district, you've got to ask questions, you've got to go find somebody to answer the questions, you got to go review the records. But they looked like what book has been banned, who asked for it to be banned, do they have children in the school, what was the final decision about the book? And what they discovered in 1,000 individual challenges is that just 11 people were responsible for 60% of the book challenges. So
11.
11. So the way I think about that is 11 people trying to make 600 books disappear for everyone.
Yeah.
The first time a book of ours was banned was in 2017, which was 3 years after Jacob's New Dress came out. And the New York Times called us one day to say that we were banned in a school district in North Carolina, and did we have a comment?
It's
And
kind of fun.
It was fun. I could call my mom and say the New York Times, which she reads the New York Times, and say, Mom, the New York Times called me today.
Yeah, and also all these people from North Carolina wrote these like love letters to us. Like, we're so sorry that our state was so rude to you. It was kind of awesome.
Yeah, and we thought, hey, it's boosting awareness of our books. They're in newspapers now. People are talking to them. Maybe even we'll see a boost in sales. Who knows, right?
Yeah, seemed like it could possibly be good.
That could happen. These days, we are no longer excited. These days, we are just preparing ourselves for life in a much more hostile world.
Yeah, I mean, we've always been cautious, right? So we write under pen names to protect the safety of our family. Because when I was writing for adults, I got some pretty disturbing hate mail. And we quickly realized that we would all need pen names if I was going to keep writing anything. But until a couple years ago, really 2021, it just wasn't like it is now. Sure, people would contact us if they were upset about our books, but they would say things like, well, you're misguided, or you don't understand, you just need to say no to your son, and then he will stop doing that. Sometimes they would tell us we would need to find Jesus, and then that's how we would learn to parent properly. They would say we're bad parents, and sometimes they get a little scary, like, I'm coming to get you, or I'm calling Child Protective Services, your children should be taken away, stuff like that. But for the most part, these were like reasonable people who just kind of didn't understand what our experience was. And so we would sometimes talk to them. Of course, it's not really worth talking to the people with the really extreme views or the threatening views.
Yeah, we tried not to take the extremists too personally, because it wasn't usually about us or the books. And it helped that most of the feedback we got was overwhelmingly positive. Parents would send us photos of their children holding, their little boy in a dress, holding up Jacob's new dress in front of them. Parents would talk to us about how their child wants the same book read to them over and over again at bedtime. Teachers would tell us how this book, and they'd pick up one of our 3 books and say it helped a particular child in my classroom, and it made such a difference. And, we set out to write a book for our kid because there wasn't a book out there for him. And instead, we found that we were helping a lot of kids we didn't know, kids we would never meet. And it was honestly a little humbling to think we were doing something good in the world like that.
Yeah, and kind of wonderful.
Yeah.
But things have changed a lot in 3 years. So in September, we were traveling to speak at various places, and I had a little downtime, and so I was like, I'm just going to check our Amazon reviews. And I think I hadn't done that since the book had come out. And suddenly there was like all this like very negative, vitriolic reviews, and lots of them. Like, our books are, little. They're, they don't have they're not New York Times bestsellers. We'd get like 10 reviews a year, not a big deal. But suddenly we had twice as many reviews. And so I was like, what is happening here? And so I did a little analysis.
And when our reviews used to be like 80% positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and 20% negative.
Yeah, so mostly positive. And again, the negative ones were like, I don't think you should talk to kids this age about gender. They weren't what they are now, which is the total opposite, so 75, 80% negative, few amount positive. And they're using all this language that, like, we now know why they are using this language, because groups like Moms for Liberty tell them to use this language. But on Amazon, our books are now called Filth and Woke Propaganda and Indoctrination. We are perverted, we are groomers, we are child abusers, and we are writing pornography. So, is that what you heard when I read you Jacob's New Dress? Did that read like porn? Okay. So, for the most part, these people haven't read our books. They're just being told what to say, and they're saying it.
And then it gets weirder. This spring, a woman in Denton, Texas, which is a large suburb of Dallas, objected to 5 books that were in the school libraries. She doesn't have kids in the school, but she objected to the 5 books, and the school fielded the request and looked through them and decided that 3 of them they would remove, but that 2 of them had educational value and should stay on the shelves, and those 2 were Jacob's New Dress and Jacob's Room to Choose. So she was incensed by this and ran for the school board seat on the basis of having our books removed. That was literally her platform. Remove these 2 books.
I'm like, lady, that is not a political platform.
So, it's weird to see your books on the news, and this whole controversy and multiple news stories about these two books. But what was really great was watching footage of the school board meeting where they talked about the books. It's not clear to me whether the school board candidate had or had not actually read our books, because her language is pretty vague. But it was clear to me that most of the people who spoke up at the school board meeting against our books had not read it. This gentleman right here, who is a prominent conservative attorney from somewhere else in Texas, spoke with great conviction about things that are not actually in any of our books. Like, he would have failed the second grade reading comprehension test easily. And but look at him. Like, his posture's great. He's got this great deep speaking voice. He's got the nice tie on. He's holding the book up upright. And if you hadn't read the book yourself, you might be persuaded that he's telling the truth.
Yeah, we're writing porn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and there's that other guy. Do you have the slide of Bob Onder? So he is a state senator in Missouri. A couple readers sent us screenshots of this. So he's running for U.S. Congress, and banning our books is part of his platform. Unlike the lady in Denton, he has a more robust platform, which includes all the typical like MAGA extremist stuff and beliefs and conspiracy theories. So in his case, he's using our book as the poster child of what he calls the woke agenda. Has he read our books? I don't know. I mean, maybe. I mean, we kind of are the poster children for the woke agenda, are we not?
He has not read our books. So now we've got people trying to sink our visibility on Amazon with an organized campaign of negative reviews. Because remember, the fewer stars you have on Amazon, the lower you show up in the search results when somebody searches for a book. So that's an organized campaign right there. We've got people lying about the contents of our books to get them banned in schools, and we've got people running for office to ban our books, it seems like, and which is all a little strange for books that are about self-acceptance and kindness.
You think? Does that seem weird to you? So when we were in Brooklyn in September, we went to the Brooklyn Public Library, and we were going to do a presentation for kids there. They were younger, so we were going to read a book and do an art activity where they get to decorate a Jacob coloring page with glitter and sparkles, and we were excited. So it was really strange when we showed up, and there were no kids there when the librarian showed us to our room. We were like, this is an empty room, not what we expected.
And we were a little puzzled, so we look at the librarians and say, "Hi, what's going on?" And they say, "Well, this is what's going on. We had a drag queen story hour at one of our branch libraries further out in Brooklyn last week, and they were reading your book, The Drag Queen, and a bomb threat was called in, and we had to evacuate that library. And so that drag queen story hour was obviously canceled, as was the library for the day. So they thought about it, and after that experience, this is what the main branch of the Brooklyn Public Library looks like. It's a huge building. I don't know whether you can see the front doors. They're like little tiny doors. Those are 10-foot tall doors. There are thousands of people in this building. They didn't want to have another experience where someone calls in a bomb threat and they had to evacuate this building. So they decided to keep our event on the calendar, but not to do any publicity about it whatsoever. They also assigned us an armed security guard.
Yeah, we've never been assigned an armed security guard to speak to children in a library before. I mean, it was a little bit cool, but it was also very, very creepy.
Really sweet guy.
Super sweet, but also very large and very armed. So there we are, we're ready to read and make art, but we have no children. And I mean, I love librarians. They're such can-do people. They're like, give me 5. And they ran down into their building full of little people and other humans, and in just a few minutes, they had 50 children, and they're, as Michael the librarian says, library kids, and they're library adults. I love that. So we got to do our presentation. So librarians are the best. But, this kind of like organized hostility, this wasn't a random bomb threat. This comes from, Ron DeSantis making certain laws in Florida, and all of this organized work. It stems from that, and what it results in is soft censorship. So librarians and teachers aren't going to want to invite an author whose presence might result in a bomb threat or some kind of risk to the safety of the people who work there, or if there's going to be a protest of any kind. So, librarians shouldn't have to be afraid to go to work. It seems kind of basic. It shouldn't be brave for the Brooklyn Public Library to have us come to an event, but it is, and we're grateful for it. And actually, we're thinking about this church inviting us here, that you may not have thought of it as a brave act, but it actually really is, and we're grateful for that. It's what didn't used to be such a transgressive act has really become one or a series of them. So anyway, should we talk about what we can do about book bans, or should we just keep doom spiraling? What do you think?
Well, we really were doom spiraling and despairing for a while there because, our books were being targeted and we kept reading about it. We kept getting the Google alerts and we kept saying to ourselves, what can we do? We can't change the laws in Florida. We don't know anybody in the Arkansas state legislature. And it was distressing, especially as the news got worse and worse. And it took us quite a while, to realize, we're authors. Maybe we should write a book about this. So this summer, we wrote a children's picture book about book banning from a kid's eye point of view. And our publisher, Imagination Press, fast-tracked the book, and it will be out in stores and libraries this September in time for Banned Book Week. And here's the cover of Jacob's Missing Book.
We're very excited. We imagine this one's going to get banned too. It has a character with two dads, after all, so. And actually, we just heard yesterday about a book, I forget what it's called, but there's another children's book about.
Ban this book.
Yeah, ban this book. And it references another banned book. And so the new book got banned because it references this other book, and the school board was really pissed off. They're like, they're just trying to go around our rules and talk about so, spoiler alert, our new book also references a banned book, so yeah, probably. Anyway, so in this moment of information suppression of all kinds, we've had to get kind of creative about speaking up. So that is one thing we're doing. We'll tell you 3 other things we're doing, which are all things that you can do too, should you be so inclined. So the first thing that we love to do is to give our love and support to librarians and teachers, because these are brave people who are doing incredibly important work under fire. Sometimes I feel this way about flight attendants too, so I always bring them candy when we fly. But, if you know them, talk to them, tell them, you see the work that they're doing, you see the stress they're under, thank them, bring a librarian flowers, thank a teacher. I just think this goes a long way for this group of people who are really under more stress than they should be. The second thing we're doing.
Can I go back to that other thing? I was just at a children's bookseller conference earlier this week, and there were a lot of librarians there too. And what they said is, if you know your local librarians, find them, tell them that you see what they're doing, that you support their work, and if they need help, that you were there for them, and they should call you.
Oh, did you cry? You cried.
It was a touching presentation that I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Librarians are good stuff.
Yeah.
So the second thing we're doing is getting involved in organizations that are actually fighting book banning, but it's bigger than that. It's also, and by being involved, I mean you can volunteer your time, you can donate your money, however you like to get involved, but groups that also promote free speech and voting rights and racial justice and investigative journalism and fact-based reporting. These things are also important because they're about fighting hate and extremism, which are the issues that are underlying these book bans. So I think the last thing that we do all the time, maybe too much, maybe for too long, but we encourage you to do too, which is just tell your stories. We all have stories to tell. Maybe we're reading an interesting banned book. Maybe we've had an experience. Maybe we read something on the news. Share it on social media. Talk to your people. I think the more that we can just use our platform, whether that's our voice, our social media, or whatever, a letter we write, we motivate other people to stand up too. And I think, the the extremists have been so good at managing to organize people. And people on the left are a little harder to corral, the whole herding cats thing, but we can do this by having conversations like this. So advocacy, it works. Talking about things works. Like those bathrooms at our kids' elementary school, they're all gender neutral now. I mean, 2 years too late for our son, but it's because we talked about it and other parents after us talked about it. And so we can make a difference when we talk. So we've been talking a lot, so we want to hear from you. We want to hear if you have questions, thoughts, anything you want to say, ask, do, or we can just break and have snacks, whatever you like.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I was going to say, just raise your hand, and we've already got one up, so I didn't even have to do that. But yeah, let me. We'll just go until we're done.
Hey, how's it going? I just wanted to commend you for getting on a banned books list, because if history's taught us anything, it means you're doing something right. And if you're angering enough people and challenging the status quo, and so I just have to, tip my hat to you guys for writing and contributing and, sharing your story and stuff, because, I don't know, if anything, getting on a banned books list is going to make people want to read it even more. So I just want to say I appreciate you guys and what you're doing.
Thank you. It really makes a difference to hear comments like that, because we take in a lot of hate these days. And so we love doing events like this and hearing from people, because then we can balance it out a little bit. So thank you.
Hi. I also want to commend you for the work that you're doing, and also for your courage. I'm a retired teacher. I retired in 2018, which turned out to be actually a really good time to retire. It was right before all of this kind of hit the fan. I was an English teacher, so I know of this. But I have many. What I wanted to say was I have many friends in different parts of the country who are both teachers and librarians, many of whom are very, very afraid, many of whom are on the verge of leaving their profession, and that is such a sad thing, because we need good teachers, we need good librarians. So I think, whatever those of us kind of in the field here can do to stand up and support, we should be doing, because it's scary right now.
Thank you for your service.
I may have missed it somewhere, but I was just wondering your platform on social, so that when this new book comes out, how can we share on our own pages to let people know and get the word out?
That would be amazing. So I think on the way out, we'll have business cards, bookmarks. We'll put them on the book sale table. We also have a handout if you're interested in that list of organizations I mentioned. But please be in touch. We are on Instagram. The Facebook page is a personal page. If you're inclined, just reach out and friend me, Sarah Hoffman, and I will say yes. It was just we're really bad at social media, so.
We're getting better, though.
We're getting better, especially on Instagram.
Also, if you have a project that we could help you with, ask us. We're happy to help.
Hi, I really enjoyed the lecture. I thought it was really well put together. I'm 22. I'm curious how your son is interacting with your work, if at all, if you're at liberty to talk about that, and how he might feel about it, and if he has experienced any scrutiny himself, or if he's made it out all right.
I'm sorry, any scrutiny what?
Like scrutiny about what the work that you're doing, if he's felt any pressure, or if he's made it out without any acknowledgement or harm.
He never he never talked about the book at all, and we were always really curious what he was thinking. But we didn't want to ask him for some reason. I'm not sure why. It seemed like a lot of pressure.
Just not wanting to pressure.
Yeah. But when he was in 7th grade, his English teacher asked if we would come in and read to the class and talk about being authors. And so that was an opportunity to talk to our son about it. And I said, your teacher asked this. I was like, what do you think of our books? And he's like, oh, I'm really proud of you for writing them. And we're like, phew. Thank God. And I was like, so would it be okay if we talked to your class? And he's like, no. And I was like, well, why not? And he said, I'm 12. I want to be known for who I am now and not what I did when I was 4. And he has this awful habit of like making things as succinct and logical as possible. So you can't really argue with that. And it was like, oh, okay.
So annoying.
It is really annoying.
So the other reason why we took pen names, I mean, the main reason was safety, right? But we also felt like, well, this is Sam's story. I don't mean the Jacob story, but the story of who he is, that's Sam's story to tell or not, if and when he wants to. And so we were always conscious of that, and we didn't want to put him in the limelight or his sister, because it was like, well, if he's going to talk about it, that's his choice to do. So like in the beginning, we got calls from, Oprah and various talk shows and things. But when we told them we weren't going to put our kids on TV, they were not interested in us anymore. So we've all, it's been interesting, but and having a pen name can be a challenge, like logistically and in terms of PR. Like we can't tell our high school and college alumni offices that we wrote a book. Like I'll buy a book if someone I went to high school with wrote it, but we have to keep it secret. So it's annoying, but it's always been the right choice for those 2 reasons. Yeah. I kind of love that you're 22, like our son is now.
I am also 22, so we got another 22-year-old here, which is crazy.
Everybody here is 22?
You do? Oh my God. Be kind of weird if she was 22. She's my mom. But I just got back from going to school in Florida, and so it's been a hot topic in I went to an art school, so it was very progressive. The students there, and so it's been a hot topic about banned books. And I took a class last semester for children's picture books. And so we talked a lot about the marketing of publishing, and we talked about the banned books because we're in Florida. And I was wondering, with your publisher, has it changed at all, your topics of the books and how you present those to your publishers, or how on board they are with it?
That is such a good question. Do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So we wrote Jacob's New Dress with one publisher, and they asked us right away for a sequel, and which we hadn't been planning on writing, but we realized we needed to write about bathrooms. And so we wrote this book for them about bathrooms, and we edited it with the editor, and it was a really good, positive experience. And then it was time for it to be illustrated, and they were stalling. And it went on for a while, the stalling, like a year or something. And finally we were like, what's going on? Why is this book not illustrated? Why haven't you picked an illustrator? And they didn't come right out and say it, but it became clear to us that somebody at the publishing house was uncomfortable with the topic.
I'm super direct, so I'm like, Wendy, are you not publishing our book? And she said, she's very Midwestern, we really want to do a sequel with you. We're wondering if it could be about siblings? We're like, it was 18 months. We have been editing a book with you for 18 months. Now you want it to be about something else? I mean, she edited it and then sat on it for a year, but.
So it was a lovely idea, a book about siblings, but it wasn't the book we wanted to write.
Yeah, and actually Leslie Newman, multi-band author, wrote that book, and it's great. Sparkle Boy.
So we went to our agent, Deborah, and we said, Deborah, this is what's going on. And she goes, I know another press that would love to have you. And she went to Imagination, and they're like, yes, absolutely, let's do a bathroom book. And then they've been very supportive of everything we've done since then.
So I love that question. Like, did we self-censor in what we brought to them? Not at all. These people are amazing. They're game for whatever. And in fact, the book we were working on before the book banning book, that we worked on for quite a while with our amazing editor, is about religion.
we felt that gender and children weren't controversial enough, so we should write about children and religion. Yeah.
And they weren't even afraid of that. I love these people. So Imagination is the children's book publishing wing of the APA, the American Psychological Association. So they're a nonprofit. They have an agenda around the gay agenda. It's an agenda around helping kids' mental health. So they're like amazing people, and they don't have a lot of the same constraints that a regular for-profit publisher does. So they have been so wonderful. We're super lucky. I think the first publisher just wasn't ready, sometimes. But it was a bummer because those 18 months were when everything was blowing up about bathroom bills across the country, and we're like, kids need this. The kids are being denied access to bathrooms right now, and we weren't talking about it. But now we're talking about it.
Hi, my name is Phil. I just have a question. Would you say that it's always the case that if a boy wants to wear a dress, that's a determinant of their sexual orientation?
No, not at all.
No.
No way. In fact, when our son was little, and of course all parents want to know, where is this going, right? Like all parents want to know, is my kid going to be a lawyer? A dentist? An artist? They want to know, is this kid gay? Is this kid going to be trans? And there's that study done by John Money at Johns Hopkins long ago that Catherine Turk would talk about. And they looked at these boys who were gender non-conforming in some way in childhood. And they followed them into adulthood. I think it started in the 70s. And what they found, it was a small study. It's not widely cited because it's small. But was a third of them grew up to be gay. Wait, is this correct? A third grew up to be gender normative. A third grew up to be gay. A third grew up to be trans. Is that correct? Hold on, I'm messing this up. One sec.
Because the trans component was much smaller because it was long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was gender normative, gender typical, and
Right,
gay.
right.
And some very small subset was trans. Well, I butchered that one. But, and I apologize. But the point is, we have no idea what's going to happen for these kids. In our case, and we don't talk widely about this, but our kid went on to be fairly gender typical. And I don't tend to say that in public only because I don't want to tell parents that that's what's going to happen for their kid, because I don't know what's going to happen for their kid. But kids can also be gender normative and end up trans. They can be gender normative and end up gay. Like, we just don't know, and gender and sexuality are two different things that are sometimes connected and often not.
And through the parents in our online support group, we got to watch a whole cohort of children about our son's age grow up. And they range all the way across the spectrum in every possible
Yeah,
way.
so there were kids who turned out trans, there were kids who turned out gay, there were kids who were gender queer, so they're like some interesting mashup of things, and then some who just went on to look like the boy next door. And really, it has nothing to do with how the parents handle it. They can be...
I'd say these are all kids who had supportive parents.
Yes, well, I was going to say, they can be damaged by lack of parental support, but that's different than what their outcome is going to be as far as their sexuality or their gender identity. There's this really interesting study that I promise I won't butcher. There's a nonprofit that's housed at San Francisco State University. It's called the Family Acceptance Project, and they looked at the rates of health and mental health concerns among straight kids, and then they looked at the rates among gay and trans kids, and of course they found that they had much higher incidences of health and mental health challenges, and they looked at all these different behaviors and concerns, so suicidality, self-harm, depression, anxiety, physical health problems. But what they found was that in kids who were supported, they came from supportive families, fully supportive families and communities. These kids had the same health and mental health outcomes as their straight, cisgendered peers. So you don't have to suffer just because your identity or your sexuality or your gender identity is different. The suffering comes when people are rejected, right? But what I love about that study too is that they found that even a little bit of support makes a difference. So if a kid's in an unaccepting family, but they have a pastor who's kind, a school nurse who takes an interest, a neighbor who's good to them, an uncle, that actually, they like mathematically modeled how that improves a kid's health and mental health. And I found that so heartening. And that's part of why we do what we do, because we know it actually makes a difference when parents love and accept their kids. How'd I do? I didn't butcher that one, right?
That's good.
Any other? Yeah.
I don't have a question, I have 2 comments, which is a little dangerous. But I vividly remember from when I was 21, I am 10 years past that now, I took a class called Boys Psychosocial Development. And one of the things we talked about is, in addition to telling boys don't wear dresses, we tell them don't cry, don't say I love you. Like, we really deny them often the ability to like express just these really normal human experiences. And so this is more a point of gratitude, that when we often think about like defying these gender norms, we're actually just allowing them to embrace human experiences. Because there's this really devastating thing that happens, like little boys have really tight relationships and tight friends, and they hit middle school and the bullying kicks in, and like they stop saying I love you to their friends. And that's just a human experience that we deny boys. And the second thing, to pick up the thread that you were saying about all it takes is these like small communities to make a difference. I had the great privilege of working on a lot of tribal reservations in medical school in a lot of like states like South Dakota, and they're sovereign nations. And what that means is, like, while South Dakota was passing these anti-trans bills, there was a male-appearing person on the girls' cheerleading team, and no one batted an eye. And the reason I bring that up is there's this tendency to feel very morose if you like want things like affirmation and acceptance, that like these entire places are these wastelands and everyone is suffering. And I think sometimes like there's these like kernels of like great love and acceptance, and it just takes a little bit. So, and I think that is what fuels my own advocacy and ability to like wake up and keep going. So those are the 2 things I offer, and thank you again for being here and for the work that you're doing. I hope that was not too long.
No, that was perfect. I love that. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
Well, and that was my question. I was like, wow, y'all seem so good-humored about all this, about being, you know.
Oh, come on, you have to be.
Well, and so I was going to ask, you know, how you find for your own well-being when you stumble into those parts of the internet or get a call from the New York Times. How do you sort of, either stop the doom spiral or intentionally try to like infuse moments of hope within the work that you're doing? And laughter up, because it seems, again, like y'all are willing to, you laugh very easily. And it seems like you take a lot of joy in some of this work that seems kind of dangerous or difficult or frustrating. So I'd just love to soak up some of that wisdom.
You know, it's such an honor and a privilege to write children's books.
He's going to cry again. He is. He's going to cry.
Like, I sit down sometimes to work, and I'm like, oh, I'm struggling with this plot. I can't figure out this work. And I just like, I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, you're writing a children's book. Like, this is what you've wanted to do all your life. Like, you are so lucky to be here doing this. Like, great, just relax. You'll work it out. It works out. It always works out. And so I think just recognizing I take great joy in this work, and just coming back to that, and the way books make kids feel, and books continue to make me feel, like that's very grounding for me. That's the positive side. The negative side to this is that after all this research into book bans and like really keeping ourselves up to date, and it's work to keep up to date because the news keeps changing. When October 7th happened, that was very difficult to process, especially as Jews. And then when the Israeli response started, that was even more difficult to process. And it came to a point in November where I was just like, I can't listen to the news right now. And because we used to listen to the news all the time while doing the dishes or making dinner or something. It's like, I've got to limit how much of this surrounds me during the day. And so I actually turned off the radio. So
wait, that didn't happen to you in 2016?
I was tougher back then, I don't know. Yeah, and so like I limit how I take in the news now, and so that it's not a constant drumbeat in my head.
I think the other part of the answer to that is we have each other, and it's really pretty huge. I think it's harder for authors who are alone in that kind of being attacked. And then the other thing is what we mentioned earlier. I mean, positive environments like this, and we get love mail too. And like with the couple of readers who sent us the Bob Onder in Missouri, like that's a lovely thing to do, right? They're like, just so you know, in your name this is happening. So there's like, we still get more positive than negative. I mean, not on Amazon, but in the world, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and again, almost finding the humor in the attacks, or even responding with, it's like, oh, they wrote another book that's just like, let's see what this does, you know. And I think I appreciate that sense of, you know, in those moments when the people who are advocating for bans want you to be afraid, or want you to retreat, or want you to be silent. That's like the last thing you're going to do. And if you do it with some humor and some joy, then it might actually, you know, show them that, well, next time they might as well give up, because you're not gonna give up. And so that's encouraging to me. Like, oh, they're just gonna crank out, like, what's the next one? Yeah, religion. Let's just go ahead and jump into it. So, yeah. Were there any other questions? I want to make sure that everybody, if you're unsettled, we've got snacks and stuff in the back, and more opportunities to have conversation, not only with our authors but with one another. What I appreciate about these sort of engagements that we do is that it brings the community together, so that we do recognize we have others who are supportive and who care, so that if we do get tired or worn out or frustrated, we can hear a word of hope from someone else. And so I encourage you to stick around. I'm not sure what's back there, but it'll be good stuff. But before we dismiss from this place, we have a round of applause for Sarah and Ian. And like I mentioned, their books are on sale, and so if you want to, you know, take an active resistance before you walk through these doors, that is an opportunity for you to do that too. So, yeah, thank you guys for joining us. We are honored to have you here, and we've learned a lot, and hope that your new release in September continues to provoke questions and encourage families who need to hear it, that there are others who share their concerns. And so, yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us, and for all this incredible work you're bringing to your community and the broader community. It's fantastic. And thank you all for being here and for your good questions and comments. I really appreciated them. And we'll bring our business cards and our resource sheets and our ears
And we'll
if
sign
you want to
books
talk.
too.
And we'll sign books if you're interested. Thank you.